Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I acknowledge the needs in our state right now, and they're great, and they're obvious, and they're all around us, and they're our neighbors. Everybody knows I love kids and I love schools, and that need is also great, and that is it. Many have heard me in the education committee talk about the viability of schools, communities being contingent on schools, and that is absolutely true. But in the communities I represent, in the 11 little cities, excuse me, Lebanon is the large one, small businesses are also the viability of those communities. And as we talk about this bill and what it does, let's remind ourselves that we're not sitting here today with two options. Vote for this bill or don't vote for this bill. It's the only solution. Those are not our options. There are other options at the table to address those needs that I just acknowledged. This is just one option that is being perhaps chosen. We talk a lot in this chamber about Main Street, and we've heard that a lot at the national level and at the state level. Everybody talks about Main Street. And so I started thinking about that. What does Main Street mean? Because unfortunately, we have used that term to the point that I don't know that it means much. So this is what Main Street means to me. Main Street means the Scio feed store in Scio. Main Street means Giovanni's Pizza up in the canyon. It means Rosie's in Gates. Main Street means my insurance agents that have been there forever, and if you ask them where their name comes from out on the marquee, you get a 10-minute dissertation of the family heritage. That's what Main Street means to me. And I go to those businesses, I'm sure you do, in your communities all the time. Had a conversation last week with one of those folks in Scio where my son has grown up and we've bought our feed. We go out of our way to buy our feed there because if they don't make money, they don't stay in town. And I'm talking to the owner and I said, this is what we're considering. Tell me about the impact. And I realize there's been a lot of talk about this is not going to hit small businesses that hard. And that was the same conversation we had when we passed every fee and regulation and mandate in this chamber. This one is not that big. It's only $12 to $18 for a carbon monoxide detector. Guess what? It's added up. And it's not just a little percentage anymore, and it's not just $12. We need to put those together, and it's mind-boggling. So I'm in Scio and I'm having this conversation with Audie, and I said, so tell me, what does this mean to you? And be realistic. I don't want a fear story. And he said, you know what? They're a one-car family, him and her, one car. These are not rich people. He says, let me tell you about the taxes I do pay. And he talked about his property taxes and his employee taxes and all these other taxes that he pays. And might I remind you that we've also decided if those people that provide health care for those employees, we've taxed them for doing that. And so we had this conversation, and he says, you know what? And he got a little cranky, and I won't use the language he used because that's not appropriate here on the floor. And he's a friend, so I didn't take it personally, and I knew he wasn't mad at me. But he spent the next 10 minutes, quite frankly, yelling at me and saying, you know what? You're going to make it hard enough, I'm going to quit. He said, I don't work the hours I work in this feed store to make money for you, and I'm tired of it. He said, so I close up. There go my employees. There goes my income. He says, and now I'm in the job market like everybody else, not able to find a job. He says, in my warehouse here that is older than dirt, and I believe that it is, he says, I make it viable. He says, who else is going to? There go your property taxes. He says, you run me out of business, you lose money. You lose money. You're not going to gain. And then I started thinking about Main Street. What does Main Street mean? Main Street means that this feed store provides a great deal of support to the community. They sponsor...
Representative Gilman yields.
Thank you, Representative. They sponsor the biggest event in the community. And you know what? I won't take the time to talk to you about every business in my district that does that. We're not just talking about cash cows here. We're talking about viable entities in our community. SIO has no big business. I'm not in love with big business. You can get great chips and salsa at the Homestyle restaurant. The Covered Bridge Coffee House, my son will tell you, is my favorite place in the whole world next to home. And then, of course, this feed store and the hardware store. They'll go away. No stores, no chips and salsa, no coffee, no hardware store, no SIO. No Mill City, no Detroit, no Idana, shrinking Sweet Home. Those are the decisions we're talking about here, folks. Not, we have a hole, here's one option to fill it, let's fill it. It's a much bigger choice than that. We need to think about that, and I urge your no vote.